Well, Gene, first, thanks so much for
Pleasure.
taking the time to talk with me. And let's first start off with, you coming off another, academic, athletic year, and obviously a booming one here for Kansas State, especially baseball, right?
Yeah.
That was another big one. And
Great way to finish.
exactly.
Yeah.
And, you had the Pop-Tarts Bowl, the women's basketball team, hosting the tournament. Men's basketball, a little bit of a down year this year, but a lot of promising movement within a lot of different programs. And just for you to illustrate, as an athletic director, how fun was it to be a part of so many different sports, being able to host things and just to be able to have the hype around, this university?
Yeah, even though volleyball didn't get the NCAA tournament, that environment and being able to beat the teams we did, Texas and BYU, and then our women's golf program as well. I think sometimes, and I tell our staff this, that we get so immersed in the actual season that we don't take a step back and really kind of smell the roses, so to speak. And I really realized that when I was sitting there during the baseball regional, and you're able to just sit and watch baseball and kind of soak it all in. Obviously, it's a game that goes 9 innings, and there's a lot of downtime in between. And then to go to a place like Arkansas and walk out of there with a regional victory, and so happy for Pete and those players. I was able to really kind of soak it in and really look back and say, yeah, it's been a phenomenal year.
Excuse me, one thing that was brought up with Pete, I know, he said, well, Gene's the only guy that I can ever, talk to and not have to set up an appointment with. What is it about being here at Kansas State where you're so accessible to be able to talk to Coach Hughes and talk to Coach Tang or Coach Mitty or, whoever it is? Why is that important for you, where it doesn't have to be a meeting? You can just pop in at any time.
Yeah, I think just ever since my career, when I was coming up the business, my mentors, the athletic directors that I worked for, were always very accessible. Even at the Naval Academy, Jack Lingle was the athletic director there, and we had 30-some sports, and every coach could pop in and see Jack if he was in town. And I always liked that. I know coaches like that. And then when I became a sport administrator, I felt it was my job to be around them and just having them accessible. And the more I was around, the more I enjoyed the teams. And then as I became athletic director at North Dakota State, again, we were in a major program with multiple sports, so I was able to do it there. And then here, same. And then part of it's just who we are at Kansas State. I mean, we're kind of one big happy family. We all support one another. Everybody wants everybody to be successful. And so for me, if I'm in town and my door's open, or I'm a text away or a call away, anytime, I said all the time, you just call or text, and I'll get back to you if I'm not in town, because it's just part of my job. But I enjoy it because I enjoy getting to know the coaches on a personal level as well, and I think it just makes our relationship that much stronger.
In relationships, whether you talk with coaches or players or athletic directors, as you just mentioned, it's all about relationships. And when you hire a lot of these coaches, like you've hired a Coach Tang, you've hired a Coach Mansfield, you've hired so many different coaches over the course of these last couple of years. And is that what's really big for you, is the relationships, and also what goes into your philosophy in terms of when you go and hire these coaches?
Well, I think it's kind of multiple facets, really, when I think about it. Certainly we're looking for somebody that fits K-State, understands the culture of who we are. Obviously Coach Tang had never been a head coach, Coach Mansfield never been a head coach. But there was just something about the programs they were around, the success that they were a part of. And I think if you find a coach that's been a part of a program that's been successful or sustained success, that's important. And then, for me, being able to get along with the coach and be able to have a good conversation. And one of the things, their jobs are hard. They're extremely hard to be able to be a coach at this level, the pressure, the success expectations, and for them to know they've got me to lean on if they need it, or somebody to just bounce ideas off. I'm not always going to say yes. I'm not always going to be able to say, yeah, we can do that, coach. But I think just having a good conversation, good, healthy conversation, hopefully makes our job a little bit easier, and that I can do whatever I can to support them.
And talk about support and in terms of the landscape of NIL, right? And then the transfer portal, there's so many things that have changed within the college landscape in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And when you talk about resources, what is it for you that, you try to give these programs, whether it's, the new coaches or a Coach Mitty who's been here a long time, or, what are some of those resources that you try to give these programs, or maybe some influence that you may see from other programs, or whatever you might see? What are some of those resources that you try to give these programs?
Well, I think it just really, again, goes back to conversations and listening to our coaches and try to figure out for them what the priorities are. And, we're fortunate because we have such great donors here at K-State. We've been able to answer a lot of the facility questions for most of our sports. We still have a few more things we need to accomplish, but in terms of the big picture. So then we could turn our focus, knowing NIL was coming, knowing some of these other things were coming, to really find out, okay, coach, what is it you need? Do you need operational dollars? Do you need NIL dollars? How do we balance the two? Listening to the coaches again to be able to go out and tell our donors the importance of NIL dollars, and finding it really was a collective effort from our staff, our Ahern Fund staff. The Wildcat NIL group's been phenomenal to be a part of it, but just more important to listen to the coaches and understand what their priorities are, and then go out and try to accomplish it by telling their stories to our donors and our support folks, just because it's important for them to understand.
And something that I talked with KU Travis Goff just a couple days ago, and something that's also been brought up. Now college institutions are able to pay college athletes here in a year and a half or whatever that
we're going to call that revenue sharing.
Yeah, revenue sharing. That's what Travis said. And maybe for you, Gene, when you hear something like that, where it's not maybe necessarily NIL money, now it's the rev share, where
right.
The schools can do that. So, what does that change in your perspective, or what goes into that now when you have another thing to look at?
Yeah, this is such a major change of direction for college athletics in so many ways. And then when you consider the dollar figure, for years and years, every time there's a new rule change, whether it's the Alston money that an athlete could get, that was a court case that was decided, or when we went to able to pay cost of attendance for our athletes, or when we decided, hey, let's feed them whenever we can feed them. Those dollar amounts weren't small, but we all, oh my goodness, we're not going to be able to afford it. We're not going to be able to afford it. And we found a way, and we were able to, come up with the dollars. This was a little different. We're talking, 20 to 22 million per school on top of the money that, and everybody thinks we just flush in cash, and that's not necessarily the case, because every dollar we raise, every dollar we generate, we're using to operate and pay the bills, so to speak. So to come up with another 20 to 22 million, it's a challenge for everybody. It's not just a K-State issue. It's, Travis and all of us as athletic directors talk about this that's really our number one topic. And, how do we skin that cat, so to speak, to figure out how are we going to do this? And then, there are so many unanswered questions right now. Yes, we have agreed to the settlement, but we still have a lot of questions that we don't have answered. How are we going to share it? Is it going to be equitably shared? Is it going to be shared based on those that generate the most revenue? And so we're still trying to figure it out. We have about 15 months to figure it out, but I'm sure we'll find a way. But it's going to be probably the largest challenge that everybody in this industry has faced in probably in the last, 50, 60 years.
Do you think it's beneficial? Do you think it's, like you said, it's a challenge, of course, right? Because that's a lot of money to try to disperse, if you will. Do you view it as a benefit, or do you is it hindering? I know, because there's so many different things that go into it. Yeah. Is it a benefit, maybe? Well,
I think there's a lot of things to it. It's complicated, and over the years, based on how we've operated in college athletics, we've focused on trying to be as competitive equally across the board. So we've passed rules that have, as our revenues grew in this business, we kept suppressing the ability of athletes to share in that, and we've done it by our rules that we've set. And we knew eventually, as these coaches' salary began to raise, and people saw some of the dollars that these athletic programs, that why aren't the athletes able to share? And I've always been an advocate of an athlete being able to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. We finally got there, and so I guess in some ways it's a good thing, and just because it allows athletes that generate the revenue, and people come to watch them and cheer for them. At the same time, we still have to we can't forget that, when we graduate seniors and we have a big senior class, they still come back and buy tickets the next year for the most part. So it's a combination effort. And so I think us being able to do that at a level that makes sense is a good thing. We also have to continue to make sure we educate the athletes so they know as they get this money that they take care of it, that they set themselves up for the future, and all of those are positives.
So, I'll base it off of, the different landscape and all this different stuff with, even coaches, let's say, right? It's so competitive now with coaches staying at different places because it's a transfer portal, right? Players can leave, and it's not the transfer portal for coaches per se, but
Right.
you know,
In some cases it is.
in some cases, if you think about it, it is. And
Yeah.
let me ask you, with Coach Tang, right? I know he's been a hot commodity the last 2 years, right? You bring him over from Baylor. He was over there for 19 years with Scott Drew, and you know there was those rumors that he may be going to Arkansas, and then John Calipari takes the job. But as an athletic director, when you kind of hear the names always get popped up in these rumors, and does it make you nervous, or you know, what are some of those things where when you see a Coach Tang's name get popped up, and then try to ensure that he ain't going, he's not going anywhere?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, it goes back to earlier conversation about communication and talking to coaches and listening to them. And you know, I've asked all of our coaches, no matter who they are, that they come to me if they're really serious about a job. You know, yes, their names are going to be mentioned, and that happens, and that's a compliment because that means they're having success, and people see them as a coach that can bring their program success. And so I think it's a compliment to them. I think it's a compliment to K-State athletics because we've built successful programs, these coaches have. But I've always asked them just to do a couple of things. One, be honest with me of their interest in a particular job, and if their name's floated around, as long as I don't hear from them, I don't get worried about it. It's when they come to say, you know, Gene, that one kind of grabs my interest. I would like to look at that one. And that's what Jerome did. Coach Tang, we were at the Final Four, and he said, Gene, I do have some interest if they're willing to talk to me. And I said, that's fine. That's all I ask. Well, then I can put my kind of brain to work and say, okay, the what ifs. What if he gets it? What if he gets offered? What if they offer him X? Are we willing to try to keep him here and do all those things? So I'm not surprised. And so far I haven't been. I think our coach has been very good with me about letting me know the seriousness of somebody. And if they're not interested, they'll tell me, Gene, that's just all rumors. So, but yeah, you get your your excitement going because you know you may have to replace a coach that's been very successful, and that can be a challenge. But at the end of the day, I also have confidence in who we are as a program and what we have to offer, and we don't want to lose them. We want to keep them here, but if we do lose them, we'll do our best to replace them with a great coach.
You know, and I know Coach Tang as well. You know, obviously he got that pay raise to hopefully keep him in Manhattan. Obviously he's staying here, and you know, I know there was something that I read in terms of a contract, like the buyout clause or whatever that might be. Can you maybe explain what the details are, if you can, of what that specific clause of that contract is?
Well, there's kind of two ways you look at buyouts. One is if we were to, make a change without cause, what we would owe that coach. And then if they do leave, I think the longer they're here, to me, that says that they've had some loyalty, and the longer they're here, I believe that buyout that they would owe us should come down. Now, as we begin to increase their value in terms of contracts, then those buyouts should go up. And, I look at a couple of things. One, what would it cost us to replace a coach in terms of the search and, the salaries and the things, all that. So what is the dollar amount we feel we need to, get back, and what's a fair amount? Usually, when you pay a coach to no longer coach, it's usually going to cost you more than it is. And that's just typical. You try to make it as fair for us and them, and that they feel comfortable with it. There has been some language in both, I think, in Coach Tang and Coach Kleiman's, that if for some reason I were to leave, they would have the option to reduce that buyout. And I think that says a lot about our relationships, again, about we both want to work together, and that means maybe an incentive for them to stay as long as I'm here, so to speak. So it's, everybody's got agents, and everybody kind of approaches things differently, and you just kind of have to have these basically negotiations and conversations and feel like, okay, yeah, we feel that's fair, or no, that's not, we want to push here. So it's a complicated process, and everybody's got a little different clause in their contract.
I'll ask you about your contract extension. I know it's not necessarily new, but it's kind of new, if you will. And, I know you're going to be here, for the long term as well. And first of all, congratulations on that. I did think that was a couple months ago or a little bit ago. But when you got, your contract extension and knowing, the home run hires, if you will, that you've made here at Kansas State the last couple of years, and to be able to be here for the long haul, and for you to be able to continue to build, what you've been able to build here in Manhattan, just how excited are you just to be here for more of the long haul?
Well, obviously, we love K-State, and to be recognized for somebody that, you know, they want to be here, they want you to be here. You know, President Linton or President Myers, who hired me, to say, hey, we have the confidence in you to run our athletic program, which is no, you know, small task anymore, knowing that we have great staff. I come to work every day, and I'm very fortunate that we have the staff we have. Makes my job so much easier. But to be able to have that confidence to say, okay, I'm secure, my job is secure, I want to, and then I can just focus on what do we need to do, and whether that's learning how are we going to navigate through the new window of the new world of college athletics with the revenue share and some of this stuff. How do we balance our budgets? How do we make sure our coaches have what they need to be successful? Make sure our student athletes come here and have a great experience. Then I don't have to worry about anything else. I can just focus on the job. And you know, at some point I'm gonna have to walk away from this business. I'm not 25 years old anymore, and you know, but I love what I do. I love being here. We've got some great challenges ahead, and you know, be able to be surrounded by a place like K-State, I'm very, very fortunate.
And to, you know, look at as well when, you know, your contract extension and so many great things, and you've talked about the facilities as well. Another big thing, right? You know, you built the new volleyball arena. You know, you've done some renovations to Bramlage. You know, obviously here at Bill Snyder, and especially in the facility market, if you will, of what college campuses have.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different big buildings and just facilities. Why is it for you now, the last couple of years, to push that envelope to make sure that whether it's volleyball or golf or whoever has those appropriate facilities?
Yeah, well, you know, I think when I first got here, that was kind of one of the first things we looked at, and we created, you know, basically a facility master plan. I knew coaches when I first got here. I visited with every coach or every staff member, and there was needs that coaches were bringing to me that we hadn't addressed. And volleyball was certainly one of them. You know, there was you know, some needs in basketball. There was some needs in baseball, and soccer was a program brand new that didn't have a stadium. So we put together this master plan, and again, we're very fortunate to have our donors believe in us and understand the importance of facilities. And before I got here, there was plenty of renovations to Bill Snyder Family Stadium and you know, the basketball facility, the Ice Family basketball facility. So we're very fortunate, because if you think about it, those big dollar facilities are done. And I have a lot of my colleagues that are trying to raise money for facilities and also trying to figure out how to manage through the era of revenue sharing, coming up with this $20 million. So for us, we're in a good spot right now. It doesn't mean we're done with facilities. I think, like I mentioned earlier, we do have some things that we have to do for men and women's golf in particular, and women's tennis, but those numbers aren't the big 60, 70, $100 million projects. And so we were fortunate to be where we are. Again, we're very fortunate to have the wonderful donors that support us and believe in us. And so it doesn't mean we're going to quit facility fundraising, but I think we're going to take a pause for a while, try to focus on the world of revenue sharing, and then see what we need after that.
And just to, you know, the fan support, right? I know you see the Sugar Bowl, you know, when we were able to go there as our TV station. We were there to go for the Pop-Tarts Bowl and be able to go to these big events and see the fans travel. And obviously there was a lot for, you know, in the Charlotte's Regional, and then also obviously in Arkansas.
Right.
Just to talk about, as an athletic director, where you have so much support and you have that fan support, when you go to these events and you see so much purple, does that bring a smile to your face?
It's actually very heartwarming, to be honest with you, just because, you know, I don't know a lot of our fans. I don't know every fan, but, you know, and particularly when you're at a bowl game and there's so much energy and excitement around it, you know, you run into the fans, whether it's just downtown wearing K-State gear, or obviously at the game or at the pep rallies, and then you look out and you've got a kind of field of purple whether you're standing on stage at a pep rally or walking into a venue. You know, our Alumni Association is phenomenal. They do a great job in supporting athletics and putting on these events. And so, yeah, you walk into a room full of K-Staters and you kind of pinch yourself and go, this is pretty cool. And they do travel a long way. And I know they spend, you know, I think of the Sugar Bowl. There was all kinds of travel issues and weather issues, and many of them just scrapped their airline ticket and jumped in a car and drove 11 or 12 hours. So, again, hats off to a great fan base.
I'll ask you. I don't know if I ever asked you this, but Pop-Tarts Bowl, right? You know, the big edible mascot. Did you get a taste of it?
I didn't. I saw it come out, and then I knew the coach and a couple of the captains were going to be the first ones, and then when the team got over there, I was like, you know, I think I'm good. But I had plenty of Pop-Tarts in my room. I said something on social media about not seeing a Pop-Tart, and next thing I know, the next day there were 65 boxes of Pop-Tarts in my hotel room. So I didn't run out of Pop-Tarts.
65, wow. Okay, so what was your favorite flavor of all of them?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm kind of partial to you know, the blueberry just because of their colors, but I like them all. I mean, you know, there's a lot of different flavors. I guess I'd forgotten how many different flavors there were.
I love it. Well, Gene, one last thing I'll ask you.
Sure.
When talk about as well the NCAA tournament, right? You know, when the women's basketball team, you bring back Aoka, right? You know, you bring back Gabby for another year. You got Serena, you got the Glenn sisters. Coach Mitty brings in a couple, players from the portal. And what goes into, if people don't know about hosting a tournament, round of the 64 and a 32, what goes into that as an athletic director when you have to put on a big, show like that?
Well, I kind of go back to when I said I get to come to work every day with some of the best in the business. And that's not an easy task because you have NCAA requirements. You literally have to transform your facility into a neutral site facility. Hours and hours of planning, hours and hours of meetings. You get information from the NCAA, you get signage from the NCAA, you get certain things that they want in the locker rooms. The locker rooms have to be set up a certain way. There are so many things that go into it, and fortunately for me, I kind of came up from the facility operations, so I kind of, I pay attention to that stuff. But I'll never forget when we were hosting this year, those first and second rounds, and I walked into the facility and realized how much time and effort our staff had put into that, and how much pride they felt that the crowds were phenomenal, the games were phenomenal. Obviously, we all wish we could have advanced out of there, but it takes a lot. It takes a full group of folks that work together, and we're very good about putting on events here. They've been doing it for a long time. Our operations staff, our fan experience staff, our Mayhern Fun staff, they all work together with one goal in mind: is put on the best event they can. So when the fans come in and the coaches and the players come in, nobody notices anything. Now they may get frustrated, but nobody else will notice. And that's what I keep telling them, guys. The only one that are noticing that if there's something not working, it's you guys. Nobody else noticed. But it's a pretty big source of pride for all of our staff to put on an event like that and to be able to host a big event like that.
It's something I'm just thinking about too, because obviously the NFL draft was just a little bit ago. I want to get your comments on, just Coach Kleiman, right? I know we've had conversations of trying to keep that legacy of Bill Snyder, and I think he's done a pretty good job of that in terms of the NFL draft picks. He's had the success, the bowl games he's been to. Just maybe this team specifically where, you had Cooper, right? Going to Dallas, and now he's teaming up with Deuce Vaughn, which I think is, really cool for him, former teammates, and, KT and Ben, and so many guys that got drafted, within the first 7 rounds. And how cool is that when you're not obviously coaching on the field, you see them on the field. How cool is that just to see them, just prosper, to the next level?
Well, again, I think it's just so enjoyable. One of the best parts of my job, and I tell our student athletes all the time, my best part of my job is watching them compete, prepare for games and compete, and even if they're not successful, to understand the hard work that they put into that. And so I get to know some of the athletes pretty well. I'll give you an example. I was in D.C. I was coming home from some meetings and get off the plane, and there's Ben Sennett, and he's coming out here to do a clinic, and I hadn't seen him since then. He'd been at, I guess, mini camps, whatever they are. Randon Plattner was out in Baltimore. We were out there seeing some of my family. My daughter calls him, and he comes over and sees us and hangs out with us. And obviously, all those guys, just you begin to get somewhat of a relationship with them, and be able to spend time around them and see them have that success. And every one of them are so humble, and they are so appreciative of what K-State has afforded them, whether it's from a football perspective or just a life perspective. And yeah, we wish them all the best of luck, and whatever they do, even if they don't go to the NFL, excuse me, whatever they do beyond that. And I think that's one of the things all of our coaches do a great job of. Hey, come back. We want to see you. We want to see you as part of this family. It's more than just the 4 or 5 years you're here. And to be able to get to know them on a personal level is really one of the best parts of my job.
One last thing I promise is now you. I promise.
That's okay.
When you look forward to now in the summertime, maybe as you're in the summer and you're kind of preparing for next year with football starting here in literally 2 months already, which is crazy. What are those things that you as an athletic director do in the meantime before football starts, before volleyball starts? What are some of those things that you have to do, and just how excited are you for another academic year and athletic year coming up?
Well, first of all, I think one of the things I hope all of our staff does is take a break. The coaches this time of year, they're out of the building. They've got 1 month or about 3 weeks in which they take. And I hope everybody kind of goes and recharges in one way, shape, or another. Just because once football starts, it's really nonstop for our staff. But you start planning. Obviously, you're kind of closing out one year's budget, and you're preparing for next year's budget. Making sure are we set with everything. We'll do a summer retreat for our senior staff and just kind of, okay, what's the year ahead? And we're talking bigger ideas of the revenue sharing. How are we going to attack it? Some of those kind of things. But really just kind of get everything ready, and our staff will start putting together, operationally, okay, we got to be ready for game one. And for me, it's just, seeing has everybody got what they need and what can I do to help? But I do the biggest thing for us and I hope for everybody is to get a breather, take some time, because once it starts, it's nonstop for 9 months and many, many hours and many late nights for a lot of our staff. So I hope most of them are kind of taking a break and taking a breather.
As they should.
Yeah,
as they should, especially
absolutely.
and hopefully when it's not too hot. But
exactly.
Gene, is there anything else that I'm missing from? I know we went over several topics. Maybe Coach Kleiman, Coach Tang, Coach Mitty, basketball, golf. Anything that I'm missing that you like to add?
Well, I just think when again kind of going back to the first part, just kind of reviewing the year, how proud I am of everybody. Whether it was our Stuart Burke comes in and takes our golf program, women's golf program, to some really new levels. Coach Mitty and that women's basketball team was just so much fun to watch. Yes, heartbreaking how it ended. Obviously the world of men's basketball is changing so much, and just kind of following that as they begin to bring in players, but just so proud of everybody, and clearly Coach Hughes, the way he and his staff finished the year, and those players, many of them could have left a year ago, and they came back to accomplish what they accomplished, and so that gives me a great source of pride to watch our athletes have that kind of success, pour their hearts and soul. At the end of the day, I think that's one thing with revenue sharing and NIL and all those other things. These athletes care about one thing, and they want to compete at the high level. They want to represent K-State, and they want to have an opportunity to win championships. Then again, as I'm sitting there watching the regionals and the super regionals, I was able to soak all that in. It was a great way to finish off a phenomenal year.
And just to almost make it to Omaha, right? I know it's almost, but just what did you see differently out of this is the last thing with Pete Hughes? What did you see out of him maybe this year that just maybe kind of clicked?
I think, really, because when we sat down with Pete, he kind of had a plan. He did have a plan of how he was going to build a team to get to Omaha. Then I think it fell maybe 1 year short. I think last year they felt they had the team that could get him there. This team gelled. They had tremendous leadership on this baseball team. Senior leaders, junior leaders, great players. And I think he felt that he's got the culture ready to continue to move the program forward. I think from recruiting base, they showed extremely well in the regional. To come out of that Arkansas regional with a win was phenomenal. So I think he's built what he felt he could build here, and he's done it in a way that Pete said he would, and I think the future is very bright.
Well, Gene, I really appreciate you taking the time to
Sure,
talk
man,
with me.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.